I'm back. Rhodes Rants for the Matrixx and Rhodes show, and we're going to talk about Star Wars. And for the sake of this video, I'm back. Rhodes Rants on Star Wars. Yeah, what my old channel used to be. This is something, you know, I cared a lot about at one time. The Last Jedi sparked a movement called the Phantom Menace. Everybody was upset. Lucasfilm injected identity politics, virtue signaling into their Star Wars, the shoddiest storytelling you have ever seen in the history of the world. And now there's a bigger issue. Even if for some reason Kathleen Kennedy was to leave and they were to try to course correct Jon Favreau, Dave Filoni running the show or something like that in the Favreau-verse, then you got a bigger issue because it's still under the Disney umbrella. Well, that's a problem. That's a major problem. Well, now Kathleen Kennedy is coming out. She's made comments. There's been this big Vanity Fair. Star Wars and Vanity Fair has been locked together for as long as I can remember, 40 years, I think, something like that. They always did these stories, and of course they're talking about Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan's the big thing coming up. I am scared to death that it's going to be awful, that the rumors and the leaks are true, and that Obi-Wan may not be the hero of this thing. Again, disrespecting classic characters. Boba Fett. Book of Boba Fett was a train wreck. I love Boba Fett. Third favorite character. That's how much I like Star Wars. I've got a ranking of my favorite characters ever. Okay? And it's not that I was ever trying to be a Disney hater. Okay? The Mandalorian's good. They talk about Solo in here. She's so far off base. She thinks it's because Alden Ehrenreich was Solo? No. I actually kind of enjoyed Solo. But the storytelling wasn't good even in that. It was like a popcorn Star Wars movie, and that's why it fell on its ass. That, and people were still angry, mad as hell over the disrespect from The Last Jedi. So a lot of people just didn't go see Solo because of that. Understandably. Let's get to this. How important is it to get outside the gravity of the Skywalker saga? Moving beyond the characters we know. How vital is it to open up those new realms? I think it is vital. Just staying within the construct of George storytelling, to keep chipping away at that, I think it would be wrong. You never stayed inside the construct of George's storytelling. You never have. Anything involving that sequel trilogy was outside of the construct. You took those classic characters and you destroyed them. You screwed them. I mean, you effed them to tears. The disrespect that you gave to Han Solo and Harrison Ford and Luke Skywalker and Mark Hamill, it's just unforgivable. The amount of disrespect. You tried to elevate these new characters that nobody gave a shit about because there was no hero's journey for Rey. Why would we root for her to come back when she never failed to begin with? She never hit rock bottom to pick herself up like Luke Skywalker did. That is why we never cared about Rey. It was the shoddy storytelling around her. It was the fact that she was, I am woman, hear me roar from the beginning. I was all-powerful Rey. There was no storytelling or character building around that character, and nobody cared about it. And by the time we got to The Rise of Skywalker, your box office was half of what it should have been for that movie. Half. I mean, you talk about the High Republic. You talk about Leslie Headland in this. I mean, it's just frightening. It's frightening that you are that lost with Star Wars, Kathleen Kennedy. I mean, you talk about Solo here. I don't want to put you in an awkward spot, but this was an understanding you come to develop from Solo. I don't want to trash Alden. I think he did a good job. This is the interviewer. But the idea that you really can't replace Luke Skywalker was something you learned from that movie. Or how would you put it? Maybe, as you say, Anthony, maybe. I think back and Solo was one of the first ideas that came up when the company was sold. No, it was not. Solo was actually an invention, an idea that George Lucas had when you had already went to buy the company. A lot of people don't know that. He wanted to make a Han Solo movie, a young Han Solo movie. But again, did you look to George? Did you talk to George? Did you bring George in? I felt good about the fact that you had Larry Kasdan. But you let his son get involved. You let his son get involved too much. That Kasdan kid totally fucked up Lando. Messed up Han. I mean, you created that awful robot, which is basically a walking, talking version of yourself. One of the first people I went to was screenwriter Larry Kasdan. George Lucas has said, Larry Kasdan, nobody knows Han Solo like Lawrence Kasdan. That is out of George's mouth. But when you have the influence of Kathleen Kennedy, you got an issue. She talks about Harrison Ford is Han. I understand. Some people, look, Harrison Ford's my favorite actor. But again, if that story would have been on the level that it should have been as a Star Wars story, okay, took the time to create a good story for Solo, people would have liked it, except you still had the fallout surrounding The Last Jedi. And that's really the problem. That's where all these issues have come from with Star Wars. It still begins and ends with what happened involving that sequel trilogy. Plain and simple. Okay, you took George's characters, you pissed on them, you introduced new characters, and people could see that you ramrodded characters in our face in lieu and diminishing the classic characters. And we felt that disrespect, having helped build this franchise. And that's the other thing. You disrespected all the people that spent all this money, all these years on these characters. And you took them and you disrespected them. You disrespected the money that our parents spent, that our grandparents spent, buying those action figures, collecting Star Wars figures, all of this stuff. And the only glimpse of respect I've seen is from Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni. And even at that, I can look at the Book of Boba Fett and tell that your little hands, your little tentacles are involved in that because the storytelling was just flat shoddy in that. That's where it begins and ends with Disney, Lucasfilm, Kathleen Kennedy. Poor storytelling mixed with political ideologies ruined Star Wars. She still doesn't get it. I don't know. Star Wars and the MCU are most likely forever dead because of people like Kathleen Kennedy. The only way this ever changes is that Disney learns a serious lesson, takes a serious clue from Netflix right now, sees what happened in Florida with Ron DeSantis slapping Disney across their mouth for wanting to inject their politics into things away from entertainment and inject their politics and their ideologies into their entertainment. If Disney cleans house, and I do mean cleans house, you got to get rid of Kathleen Kennedy. You got to get rid of Michelle Rejuan. You got to get rid of Bob Chapek. You got to make sure Bob Iger doesn't come back. And you got to turn it over to somebody that doesn't give a shit about today's political climate and gets back to telling good stories. I mean, that She-Hulk trailer is a dumpster fire rolling down the hill on a tire fire. It looks terrible. I mean, that big-ass woman carrying that little man. If that's not a political statement, I don't know what is. Get back. Star Wars, I always said, I will always say, Star Wars was a conservative story to begin with. A young farm boy going through the trials and tribulations. A farm boy. Disney, Lucasfilm, Kathleen Kennedy never understood who their audience was for Star Wars. Plain and simple. We've got to get away from the Skywalker saga. You did that. You did that. Just because you popped the Skywalker name on the end of Rey's name doesn't make her a Skywalker. You let a Palpatine end and win the Skywalker saga. Let that sink in to everybody. Star Wars, the rise of Palpatine and the death of Star Wars. Peace. I'm out.